Hi, this is Paul Minicucci, Executive Director of NCTV at Nevada County Digital Media Center. And I'm sitting here with Dr. George Rabine, who's been a guest on our show many, many times. George, thanks for willing to speak.
Thank you very much for inviting me and doing this little introduction.
Yeah, so we're here at the Holiday Inn Express in Grass Valley at a very important event, both for the kids who are involved in it, but also for our community. So tell us about the Tech Forum, George. Where did it come from, and what's the value to the community?
Tech Forum was an idea we had in SESF to support Tech Test. Tech Test is a merit scholarship examination, which now is in its 6th year. We started in 2007. And it is to encourage our young people, specifically Nevada County high school seniors and juniors, to go into technology careers, or the so-called STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So what Tech Test does is puts the student through a grueling, as I like to use the word, grueling 4-hour examination, and the high scorers get the money. It is truly a merit scholarship. So one of the things that we'd like to do, obviously, is to get more kids interested, get more kids taking the test, and therefore, to do that, I think we need to fund the test at a larger level. Tech Forum, we thought, might be a good vehicle through which the community can participate in this kind of a technology merit scholarship. And it would be a two-way transaction, if you will, that Tech Forum would return to the community through its speaker series, an opportunity to find out what kinds of technologies are going on in the world, how can they impact life here in Nevada County, and in the bottom line, how can we encourage economic development for our county? So in other words, we were looking at it as a win-win kind of a enterprise. And it is our firm intent not to make this the last Tech Forum. We want this to become a regular event.
Yeah, let's hope so. It's a great annual event. So the test itself, is it more mathematics, or is it more physics, or is it all of the above?
It's kind of all of the above. It's mathematics has become the common glue of all the sciences. Every one of the sciences, whether it be biology or anthropology or even sociology, they have become very information technology based, which means computing, which means mathematics one way or the other. Tech Test itself uses the tool set that the young people have learned in high school through their high school science and math courses in an undergraduate university level environment where their critical thinking skills are drawn out. So in other words, they see new kinds of problems that they may not have seen in high school, but they have the tools with which to solve them, and hopefully that inspires them further, saying, my gosh, you know, I can do a lot more with what I've learned than what I've done so far.
And you provide some scholarships for the kids?
We write them a check. We literally write them a check. Tech Test has 13 winners, 3 first, second, and third prizes, and 10 honoraria, if you will. And we celebrate I don't know where this term came, Tech Test survivors. Yeah. But every year, about May, early May, after Tech Test.
It's a badge of honor, I'm sure.
It is. we invite the test takers to a tech test breakfast. It's usually held at Tofinelli's. And there we honor them. We hear the stories of where they're going with their future education. We announce who the three are, but we don't tell, tell them who's first, second, and third, because the checks are actually announcements that are being made during the big awards ceremony that is held annually with all the scholarships given. SESF hands out its scholarship for tech test at that time. So, but we do give them T-shirts. Everybody gets a T-shirt, and we get to keep a couple of ourselves. So we have Tech Test Survivor 2007, 8, and so forth and so on.
Do you have any anecdotal stories about folks who've taken this or who come back and tell you, gee whiz, this was the fulcrum for me to go to Stanford or Berkeley or whatever and become an engineer or become a mathematician or physicist?
Haven't had the ones coming back yet because we're still that young. However, we've had people come back and talk to us and send us, if you will, communicate with us about the experiences that they're having as they went out and they had taken tech tests and so forth. In fact, one of our tech test takers is right now at West Point. So we're looking forward to a lot of stories coming back.
I think once we get to that point, we can really see the seeds develop into full flower. That I think it'll live more vibrantly in the minds of our people. When you can point out, because you'll have, I'm sure, some speakers alumni coming back and saying, I sat in that chair, and and this was the ticket for me to be able to make the most of my life.
Hopefully, well, today at the forum, we will see young people sitting at the various tables who are taking the test this year. So it'll be interesting to perhaps get some remarks from them.
Right. So what's going to follow now, folks, is that we're going to be taping the actual luncheon. We have a wonderful speaker, Rick Hutley, who is the Vice President for Innovations for Cisco, and he's going to talk about the new age of technology. And thank you, George, for bringing him to our community.
Well, I'd like to add my own thank you to Rick Hutley. I mean, he drove up here last night. We've been having conversations with him for last week or so. Anyway, we are so pleased to have a world-renowned speaker like Rick Hutley to come from Cisco and to speak to us and launch this series with us. And so, again, thank you very much, Cisco, and thank you very much, Mr. Rick Hutley.
Right. So we'll see you on the other side.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Vandenberg, the organizer of the inauguration of Tech Forum 2012. Tech Forum is being hosted by the Sierra Science and Economic Foundation, SESF, as you've seen the logos. Tech Forum was created for 3 reasons: to raise awareness of the importance of encouraging Nevada County students to pursue technology-based degrees, raise money for Tech Test, the merit-based exam that provides scholarships for our students, and to bring cutting-edge speakers to our beautiful area. It's been very nice for me to be part of something so positive during this time of education budget cuts. I would like to request that those who tweet that the event is now in progress. Furthermore, I would like to ask you all to turn your phones to off or silent. However, when the event is over, please turn them back on and call your friends and colleagues and let them know what you have missed. This is going to be quite an event. Before we get started, I would like to introduce and thank some folks. First, Congressman Tom McClintock's representative, Kimberly Pruitt. California State Senator Doug LaMalfa's representative, Jennifer Horn. And next, and most important for this event, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Nevada County, key support led by CIO Steve Monahan and Supervisor Ed Schofield. AJA Video Systems, Christine Foster, Nevada City and Grass Valley Chambers of Commerce, the Economic Resources Council, the Union Newspaper, Olympia Mortgage and Investment Company, the Weiser family, which supported the students. They're not here, but they supported the tickets for our students that are in attendance.
That's great.
And then I'd like to say a very special thank you to George Foster, Russell Steele, and Luke Vandenberg, who were my core team in organizing this event. They were my advisors, idea guys, and figure-it-outers. Thank you also to Dr. George Rabine. Please stand.
Yes, you have to stand, George.
He's known as the father of Tech Test, and I know we have a lot of educators in the audience here today, so please see Dr. Rabine if you would like Tech Test to come to a campus, to your campus. And thank you. I'd like to also thank each and every one of you for attending today's event and supporting our students in being the leaders of tomorrow. So how did we all get here? Well, my husband Luke heard Rick speak at his, to his team at Cisco and was quite impressed. Luke told George and Christine Foster about it, and George suggested we should have him up for Tech Forum. So we contacted Rick, and lucky us, he agreed to come up. This is really quite something, as he normally meets with the boards of the Fortune top 20 companies. We told him where we were located after he said yes. Our keynote speaker, Rick, is a good sport. He's a very intelligent, smart, family-oriented man who has four...
it's embarrassing.
who has 4 children, one of which is in college. I cannot wait to hear what he has to share with us. A remarkable man, Mr. Rick Hutley.
Thank you, Laura. Well, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me at the back. If not, just let me know, because believe me, I can shout. So I like to wander around, although the tables are real close. And I was asked over breakfast this morning, I had breakfast with George and Russ, and they said, you know, why did you come here? What persuaded you? And quite honestly, this is what persuaded me. You are a community who actually is interested in doing something. This is oversubscribed. Believe me, the number of companies I talk to around the world who, shall we say, talk a good talk, they just don't walk quite as fast as I would like them to. So it really is refreshing to come and meet a group of people who have a genuine interest in doing something. And in particular, the youngsters amongst us. I've managed to sit down with most of you. But they are the future. I have this picture on my slide for very good reason. I talk about technology of the future. Apologies for the blurring here, but I talk about technologies of the future. I talk about lots of things. I'll talk about anything, so be careful. If you ask me a question, I will talk about it. Which brings me to a point, by the way. Please ask questions as we go along. In fact, join in. If you've got other anecdotes, other stories, Laura has a microphone. But let's make this interactive. Otherwise, it's going to get pretty boring for you, and even more boring for me, because believe me, I've seen the slides before. So ask questions, particularly you youngsters. But the reason for having this young man here is this really is the future. We know that. Our children are the future. But what I say to the boards of these mega giant companies and governments, I mean, we've worked with everyone from the White House to the National Health Service of the UK, is if you want to know about trends and you want to know about the future, start by looking at the children. Because they do things that we don't like. And we don't like them. We don't like them because, you know, it's not the way we do things. They think differently. They operate differently. You guys will tell me this, won't you? I have an 18-year-old daughter. She's just started at the University of the Pacific. And I was sitting there the other week, and she's clicking away on her phone. And she'll click, 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 click. And then she'll be back to her laptop doing her homework, and then click, 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 click. Oh, God. And I stopped and I said, for goodness sake, just phone them. It's a telephone, for God's sake. And of course, she just rolled her eyes and looked at me and said, oh, Dad, we don't work that way. And being in the job I'm in, I kind of probed a bit further and said, why don't you work that way? It's a phone, that's what I bought it for. And she said, well, if I text, I have time to think. If I'm on the phone, I have to respond. If I text, I have time to think. And of course, I grew up in the telephone age. That had never dawned on me. Gosh, I can actually think before I open my mouth. And the second thing she said, besides which, Dad, I can't call them. There's 3 of them. And I thought, she's right. This generation, these young folks in this room here, multitask. We don't. I grew up with paper, and then we migrated to email. What an advent. And the telephone. But today's generation multitask. This picture actually is wrong. They don't use the telephone. They use whatever tool they want to use. So, I haven't even got off the opening slide yet. I told you I'll talk forever if we're not careful. Watch the youngsters and encourage the youngsters, and to our young folks in the room, and indeed to all of us in this room, my purpose here today is to open your minds. I was asked the question here, about what would I do differently if I was back at school today. Knowing what I know, what would I do differently? And my answer was, you don't dream big enough. Whatever you think you're going to be, whatever you think you could do, you can do 1,000 times more in your lifetime. Trust me. Think really big, because you can do it. There is nothing to stop you nowadays. I want to share a few interesting facts. I usually have a clicker, but unfortunately I've used up all my USB ports. One of the downsides of technology. Hey, you can't get it all right. This is kind of an interesting picture from the time, Homo sapiens sort of landed on the planet or did whatever we did, to today. There's a whole debate about where we came from, but that's something else that I'm not going to get into. In less than 0.2% of human existence, we have gone from the locomotive to the human genome. That's interesting. But what's more interesting is to think why. Why has that occurred? And fundamentally, it's about communication. We innovate when we communicate. So when we were back there, it was about fire. Someone discovered fire, figured out that it actually is useful for cooking stuff, and they passed that information on by word of mouth. And of course it spreads quite slowly because tribes of humans didn't roam around that much, but it did spread. Then along comes Caxton. Of course, I know I've jumped a few million years, but that's okay. Along comes Caxton, and suddenly we can print things over and over. Now we can send that same information to tens of people or hundreds of people across a city. We accelerated faster. Then we get the telephone. Wow, was that a revolution. Now we can communicate with people all over our city, in fact, all over our country. Eventually, of course, all over the world. But even all over our country. The speed of communication accelerated, and so did this. What I haven't drawn on here is the exponential curve of innovation. So the faster we're able to get our ideas out to more and more people, the faster as a human species we've been able to innovate. And then along comes the internet. We can now communicate with every single person on the planet at the speed of light, theoretically. Everyone can get information at the speed of light. That's what, again, I was saying to the young folks. You have access to information that we could never even have dreamed of. And so the speed of innovation is going to accelerate at an incredible pace, and already is. What does that mean to you and I? It really comes back to the point I made a moment ago. Whatever you think your dreams are, whether it's for your company this year or your lifetime and your career over the next 20 or 30 years, whatever your dreams are, they're not big enough. Go double them, triple them, multiply by a factor of 1,000. Think big, because there is nothing standing in your way. And that's the point of this next couple of slides. These are some of the things I'm not going to cover. But they're hugely important. Video everywhere. 18 months ago, I would have had a discussion around that to convince you that video is a powerful medium and is going to be everywhere. Now, I don't have to convince anyone. Now, when I talk to these big companies, their challenge is, we know video's everywhere. How the heck do we control it? That's another whole different conversation. If you want to catch me afterwards, we can talk about it. But I'm not going to cover these things because they're just, at least to me, they're just plain obvious. There is no argument. They're there. Globalization, mobility, consumerization, electronics. That means that the children of today, the young folks of today, are going to bring technology into our world, and we can't stop them. So we got to figure it out. Virtualization, cloud computing, there's a whole list I could have gone on to. I am very happy to talk about any of these topics or any others you may have. So please ask questions on anything. If I don't know the answer, I will tell you. But as someone once told me, I have the ability to talk about anything at the drop of a hat, whether I know anything about it or not. Simplifying it down a little bit, 4 key mile pillars of the technological world. Storage, bandwidth, compute, and information. The key point on each of these, by the way, there's theoretically a graph on each of these. You can only just about see it. There it is. It's an exponential graph. They're all exponential. Pretty much everything today is exponential. It just is. The key point, however, he says, there we go. There are no practical limits to any of these things. None. You can have high-def, real-time video transmitted to your wristwatch while you're climbing the mountains and digging for gold, if you so wish. I mean, technologically, it's possible. You may need to go get hold of AT&T to put in a new cell tower, or dig up a few roads to lay in a cable. But there is no technological barrier to any of these things. That means you can do anything that you set your mind to. There is one fly in this particular ointment, and that's the bottom right. There is apparently no limit to the amount of information that we're going to create either. And managing that volume of information is a huge challenge that certainly Cisco and many other companies in the world are trying to find answers to and try and solve. And there are answers on the horizon, by the way. I'm not talking about it here, but if you want to talk to me about the semantic web and a whole bunch of other things that are coming along, artificial intelligence, then I'll be happy to talk about that. But this is, to me, this is probably one of the most important messages I have in the entire presentation. There are no limits. Yes, sir. Excellent. We wait for the microphone.
In light of all of this, this no practical limits to these 4 categories, what happens when the machines are doing everything and we're just sitting around with nothing to do?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The answer that history has shown us, at least, is that we don't actually get to that point. We've had this debate, we, the human race, have had this debate for many, many years. I wasn't around at the time, but I'm sure they had the debate when Caxton's first started printing things. Oh my goodness, now this is going to fundamentally transform the world and we'll all be out of jobs. Well, it did fundamentally transform the world, and we all moved jobs. We changed what we did. Along comes the telephone, along comes computing. I certainly remember in my age, I was as young as some of these folks here when computers really started to come into being. And if any one of them laughs, there's probably trouble. And we had the same projections then. Well, computers will take over, and there'll be no jobs, there'll be mass unemployment. The reality is that we move on as a species. And let's interesting point in fact, let's take this information explosion here. It's exploding because we created new ways of doing things, so we're doing new things. And we have whole industries that didn't exist before technology gave us the ability to do these new things, to create our own videos. Every one of us in this room has the ability to become a teacher. Now, we may not be qualified, but we share our knowledge nonetheless. Couldn't do that before. We have thousands of people. I'm actually working with the European Commission, for example, in Europe, on how we can keep the retired generation, the baby boomers that are all retiring, how do we keep them in productive employment, so to speak? Partly because they actually want employment, they actually want to remain involved, and partly, quite frankly, because the world needs them. We're losing expertise, again, at an exponential rate, and it's really concerning. So what technology does, you know, what it gives on one hand, or takes away on one hand, it gives on the other. It opens up new opportunities. Now, that does not come without casualties. Again, like everything from Caxton to the locomotive to telephones to computers, there is a shift in skill requirements. There are demographic shifts, there are geographic shifts, there are all sorts of shifts, and that does cause tension and it causes challenges, for sure. But in the grand scheme of the human species, we move on and we add new things to our arsenal. And so I have no fear that this is going to put us all out of jobs. But hold that question until I get towards the end of this presentation, because you may want to ask me again. We'll see. Any other thoughts, questions, challenges on this statement? Yes, sir. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. So to repeat, just in case we're trying to record this, the question fundamentally is there may be no practical limits on the technology, but there are human limits on our ability to do this. And you're absolutely right. We are already there. We've been there for many, many years. In fact, I would suggest hundreds of years in many cases. Our capacity to utilize all of the information at our disposal, we don't have that capacity. We can't do it. Last time you did a Google search, you probably come up with hundreds of thousands of search results. So Google and others, including Cisco, the big companies of the world, so to speak, the big technological companies, are looking at that. So it's a topic, by the way, known as big data. If you're out there in the big wide world, it's called big data. And it's a real problem, because how do you sift through this vast amount of information and pull out what you need, what's useful, so that we move from, again, talking to George earlier today, we move from the information age to the knowledge age. The answer, as is in many of the case, it's the technology that caused the problem, and actually it's the technology that has the answer as well. I'll give you an example. We can automatically tag video. We have a product. Any of you here use telepresence, just out of interest? A few of you. Okay. It's really high definition video so that we can have meetings with anyone anywhere in the world. Well, we can record those videos. But what's more interesting is being able to tag that video so that we can search for keywords. You know, when did Rick mention the budget? And it zips to the right point in the video. So I don't have to search all the way through the video for several minutes waiting to find what I'm looking for. The technology will take me there. But it will do an awful lot more for me. So that's video analysis. Obviously, we've been able to do text analysis, speech to text, text to speech. So we've always been able to search on text. Pull up a book and you can search for it and it'll tell you everywhere where a given word occurs. But now imagine a situation where I'm having one of these telepresence video sessions and the computers in the background are searching through and then interrupt me and say, hang on, Rick, that topic was discussed last week by the president of your company. They reached a decision. Would you like me to take you to that video exactly where they made the decision? And I say, yes, please, thank you very much. And it does that for me. That's available today. So we've got to come up with new technological tools that will help us navigate this mammoth mountain of information. George, did you have... or did
Yes, in these discussions using words like, can everybody hear me? No.
Hang on, George.
In these discussions on a technical level, there's always been a difference between data and information. And on an informal level here, we sometimes confuse it and we get into problems. What is happening is that data is being generated at enormous rates. Disks are getting filled, by the tera, exa, big bytes. Information is different from data. Data is facts and beliefs about the real world. Information is data formatted to support decision making. Mm-hmm. You can never have technically an information overload, because as soon as it's no good for making decisions, it reverts back into data. So, easy way to think about it is look at your phone book. White pages are data. Yellow pages, where you can see Joe the plumber's logo and what services he provides and so forth and so on, and his phone number and address, that's information. So yellow page is information, white page is data. Big difference.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, George. And you're right. So that's, we're going to come up with new techniques. Yes, ma'am. We're going to need the microphone. Vanna's getting there as quickly as she can.
I'd just like to throw in one extra factor that I don't know if you're going to discuss later, but it's one thing to have all this fantastic information around to the point where now I know that people like myself are getting paranoid about stopping other people getting information. Mm-hmm. What systems do you see coming in that address things like compassion, morals, concern for one's neighbor? As we're going more towards technology, how do we introduce that component into the technology that does our work for us?
Wow, that is a big question. Yeah. Anybody want to answer that? Okay. There are a number of things that are being done, and some are here and now, and some are way on the horizon, to be fair. First of all, let's start at the end that is being addressed and is step one in that ladder of things that need to get done. The whole issue of security and privacy are the fundamental building blocks of part of that. And those are technologically resolvable. You've got to constantly keep updating them, because as soon as you invent one security mechanism, so the crooks come along and invent it, it's always a race. It always has been, by the way. You go back to the Wild West and what were those guys on ponies? Pony Express. There we go. You stick them on trains in safes and they figure out how to break the safe open. So you stick them in banks with bars on doors and they figure out how to get through those. That will always be the case. But the fact is, we do have very sophisticated ways of protecting data and locking it down. Some of them cost money, but whatever, we can do it. Privacy is a slightly trickier issue because it involves you and I. Privacy is something that we have to take an active part in and subscribe to or not subscribe to. And unfortunately, we are easily fooled. So companies can use technologies to put in place protection systems, and then we either foolishly, quite frankly, or we're tricked into giving up information. And we see this on everything from Facebook to everywhere else. Click on this and we'll tell you how to cut your mortgage in half. Well, actually, by clicking on that, you've inadvertently approved for them to take your private information, and the rest we all know about. So I think there's a degree of education on how to use technology wisely and safely. there are things that can be done to help that. Double, safeguards and checks. There's phishing attacks that occur, and we have techniques now for detecting phishing and phishing sites. There's all sorts of things going on there. But you then started to get into a much more complex area of really emotional technology, and how can it help us live in a community and so on. There are things that we can do, and I'm going to kind of touch on them. First of all, technologically, we can detect emotion in the voice. Cisco's actually been selling a product like that for several years to call centers, so that they can have a computer that's actually saying, the customer's getting frustrated, now the customer's angry. The customer rang off. We can detect these things. So we can pick up on emotion in the voice. We can detect body language. Think at a very simple level. Think of your Xbox 360. Anybody, your kids got Xbox 360s? Yeah, you've got gesture technology now. We can detect hand movement. We can detect body movement, so we can detect body language. We can detect emotion in the face. So we can detect emotion in the voice. We can detect emotion in the face. We can detect body language. If you talk to the military, and I can't tell you too much details, but they can also detect fear and various other emotional responses. They can detect it through eyes. They can detect it through your breath. You'll be stunned at the things that technology is able to detect. The question then comes, okay, what do we do about that? How do we turn it into the self-help community, love thy neighbor stuff that's critically important? And actually that is, again, something I'm talking to the European Commission about. Because with the aging population of the world, the big question is, how do we help them be more self-sufficient? Partly because the state can't afford to look after that many elderly people. We just don't have the money. And partly because, as human beings, we like to be self-sufficient. We don't like to have to wait for a nurse to come and look after us. We'd like to look after ourselves. So we are using technology to create communities, multiple communities. We actually use this inside Cisco. We have a system that allows us to create communities on the fly. Some are created by the company, some are created by me as an individual. So I might create a geek community, and I'd invite all these youngsters to come join my geek community. Could be a church community, could be a work community. Cisco, by the way, is quite enlightened, in my opinion. They allow us to have personal, private, social things and communities every bit as much as work things. So we actually encourage our employees to say, by all means, put your golf community up on the Cisco systems. Happy employees are good employees. So we try to encourage that. But there are ways, is what I'm trying to say, there are ways of using technology to help bring people together, enable them to collaborate, and not just on a local basis, but on a global basis. Back to my daughter. She thinks nothing of texting and talking to people all around the world. I often wonder, well, how do you connect to them? And then I thought, well, of course it's easy to connect. She puts something up on Facebook, and then someone else sees it, and someone from China then joins in. And they think nothing about opening their doors and say, oh, okay, come and join the conversation. Their ability and opportunity to break down the cultural barriers around the world is phenomenal. How good will they be at it? We will wait and see. But we are watching you. Okay, boy, this is going to be fun. I don't think I'm ever going to do the demonstration, in case I want to stick around others. There is a prize, ladies and gentlemen. I knew they'd pick their heads up then. There is a prize for anyone that can pronounce that number. It is actually the IP6, what we call the IP, the Internet Protocol 6 addressing scheme. That's completely irrelevant. What is important is what's underneath. Think of the address as being literally like an envelope that you put into the postal system. And imagine that you've only got so many letters or spaces in which to put that address. You eventually run out of the number of houses that you can write to because you've got no more addresses to hand out. That's what we got to 2 years ago with the internet. We literally ran out of addresses. So the big technology companies, created this new thing called version 6 of the Internet Protocol, which has that addressing range, which is astronomical, literally. 4.8 trillion addresses for every star in the known universe. Every grain of sand on that beach could have 48 trillion addresses. The important thing, what I really want to get through to you is, what do you do with that? If you can put an IP address on something, roughly speaking, what that means is you can track it, you can monitor it, you can control it, etc. If you can see it, if it has an address, you can do something with it. So what do you do with it? And I don't expect answers unless you've got some. But think about it for your company. You could track every cardboard box ever built or manufactured on the planet. You'd know exactly where it is. Ask any company that's got logistics. I talk to companies like Walmart. Just to think of how many cardboard boxes they have. And now we have the potential to tell them exactly where every single one of them is. I could tell them which way up the box is. I could tell them how long the box has been in that particular location, where it's traveled over the past, well, since it was manufactured or chopped down as a tree. What do you do with that information? What new services could you provide if you could do that? And the one I usually give. Okay, everybody out. The one I usually give is, I never get through my presentations. Where's Laura? You're going to have to keep me on time. Imagine a surgeon in an operating room. I've got a few healthcare examples later, and I know there's some healthcare folks in the room here today. You know, imagine a surgeon that has an IP address on those rubber gloves and the scalpel. You know. Never again will we wonder, did I leave a scalpel inside a patient? We know where it is. But let's take it a bit further. What if he had not just an IP address on that rubber glove, but 5 IP addresses? Or 5,000 IP addresses on every rubber glove? Now, that operating room, which has a wireless network, let's say, can know precisely where that surgeon's hands are. What exactly he or she is doing with those hands. Which instrument they've picked up, how close they are to the body. That's the kind of thing that will fundamentally change the way in which surgeons may choose to operate. But it could be any one of our industries. This dressing scheme is absolutely phenomenal. So let's look at a few of them. We'll go a bit further. We've all seen RFID, I would imagine. Everybody's seen RFID. If you've ever tried to walk out of a shop without paying, you will certainly have seen one. So we can RFID things, but look at this one over here. This is a millimeter computer. It's against a penny. A microscopic computer. I'll come back to that in a minute. Displays. Every surface has the potential to be a display. Every surface. Wallpaper could be manufactured to be a display. We actually have the technology to do this today if we want. They're manufacturing paint that can be a display. Go back to my surgeon, you know, I'm knee-deep in blood, and I don't want to touch anything, obviously, but I want to see the x-rays. Well, first of all, the room knows which wall I'm facing. And obviously I just say I'd like to see the x-rays of so-and-so's leg, and up it comes on that wall. And then as I turn back to face my patient, so that moves with me onto that wall. The room is intelligent, so to speak. It knows what I'm doing. It's contextually aware. We even have cars that will be able to change paint and color at a whim. So talk about custom cars and things like that. It's all coming. Every one of them here is real. This is the Harry Potter stuff. Any of you got Kindles? Yep, so that's digital ink. If you were to break it apart, which I don't suggest, it's semi-flexible. They're coming out to be really flexible now. You'll have roll-up keyboards that literally just fit in your pocket like a pen or whatever. So everything could be a display. These are just factoids, points in space. But we need to try and pin them together. The Internet of Things. You may have heard of the Internet of Things. And what that fundamentally means is the point in time when there are more things connected to the Internet than there are people. This is also related to something known as the singularity, which I know George has got a great blog on some of that material and tracks that very nicely. But this is the point where things are connected to the internet, and the singularity really is referring to when they become, at least perceived to become, more intelligent than we are. And I'll come towards that towards the end of the presentation. We've reached this point already. This is deliberate in the right place. Around 2008, there are more devices connected to the internet today than there are people. And it's bringing with it another opportunity or challenge for our companies, something called BYOD, bring your own device. What the younger people are saying nowadays, by the way, that's not, I just didn't make that phrase up for the heck of it. That is what the industry is struggling with. What's happening is, in the past, when I was a CIO at British Telecom, I controlled the IT world. I defined what our laptop standard was, our phone standard, every other standard, because that was my job. My job was to control IT and make sure it was secure and safe and so on. What CIOs are realizing now is we can no longer do that. I can't stop someone walking into our company with a flash drive. It's nigh on impossible, unless I put scanners like they have at airports in every doorway, which is infeasible. And I frankly can't really stop people using whatever phone they want, because they just say, fine, then I'll use my own phone and walk into our company. And of course, those phones today are mini computers. So it's like, gosh, how do I control this? And the answer in part is you don't. You have to do a 180 and say, how do I enable our employees to use any device they want, but still maintain security and control, etc., over our information? So this is a real challenge. It's an interesting one. It's opened up lots of new opportunities, but we blame you guys. Here's another example of things that are here and now. So there's that millimeter computer again. Here's a camera that's the size of a syringe, of a surgical syringe. Or can you just about see, actually it's the light grey dot on that fingerprint, in the middle of that fingerprint? That's something known as a MEMS sensor, a microelectronic or microelectromechanical system. It's a motor. It moves. And it's that big. Now, inject a few of those into your body and say, could you just go run around the body and repair that hernia for me, please? Yes, George. Oh, yes, laser. Thank you, sir. I haven't got mine with me because it didn't work. I appreciate it. George and I were sharing toys earlier, and I also point out I've got a green laser, which if any of you are into astronomy are fantastic, because you can see the beam of light and you can point at it for kids and say, look, it's that star there. Have I turned it on, George? Oh, I just had it the wrong way round. I was actually pointing at my foot. There's the MEMS. It's that little dot there, which is almost impossible to see even from here. There's something called smart dust. Very much the same thing. Thank you, sir. That's a good idea, just in case. Something called smart dust. Imagine taking thousands and thousands, millions of those, and spreading them all over this floor, weaving them into the carpet, weaving them into the wallpaper, so that now we have a room that has sensors everywhere. Back to my surgeon, and now the room really is intelligent. It can really sense where I'm at, which way am I facing. We even have, back to your question, ma'am, we even have software that can detect changes in emotion through gait. How am I walking? Am I walking furtively, indicating that I'm looking to do something untoward, like steal? Am I walking in a tired fashion? Is Rick upset today? We can tell all of that. The computers can tell that from the way we walk, the way we talk, the way, just everything. So, bit of a scary world, but I'm sure our young folks here are going to make good use of these things. And here's just a few other examples of where these things might turn up. There is a tree in Brussels, actually this is a bit old, it's over 4,000 now. There's a tree in Brussels that has more Twitter followers than I'm sure most of us combined. Not quite sure why one wants to follow a tree, but clearly a lot of people do. In all seriousness, the tree tweets, it says things like, here's how my branches are moving, here's how the wind is affecting me, here's the stress on my roots, or my this, that. For some folks, if you're in that field, I think the young lady back there was going to go into agriculture, bioagriculture. Yeah, this is a valuable source of information. Let's not chop them down and dissect them. Let's just stick little sensors on them and wait for them to talk to us. Or cows, 200 megabytes a year that are transmitting. They don't literally have a cap on their head, by the way. Why? Well, because cows are very expensive animals. And if you can monitor them, you know, animal husbandry becomes a very different science when you can actually follow them and you know where they are. And again, back to the emotional component. You know, cow number 46 looks sick today. It's obviously upset. Not quite sure what you do about it, but there we are. You know, connected shoes, asthma inhalers. I'm going to come to the Proteus chip later on. So these things, when one asks, what are all these things that are connected to the internet and why would we care? We care because they actually be very, very useful indeed. Big data, we was mentioning big data. This is just a factoid that I find amusing. 1 zettabyte of data, zettabyte, however you want to pronounce it, will traverse the internet by 2015. 1 zettabyte. Don't even begin to ask me how to explain what that is other than what it says there. 1 zettabyte is a stack of books from Earth to Pluto 20 times. 72 billion miles long. That's how much information we are transmitting or will be transmitting across the internet. Now, can I prove that? No. Is it right? Probably not. It will be more than that. That's just the nature of life. Phenomenal amount of information. For the teachers in this room, we should never accept the excuse that, you know, I couldn't get the information, I couldn't find the information, well, I couldn't find, I'll accept for a while. But we have more information at our disposal than ever. And the good thing is we are all connected, and I will underline the word all. You are in this idyllic location up here. It's fabulous. I walked around last night, again this morning. It is absolutely fabulous. But that does not mean that Grass Valley is a sleepy little town in the backwoods. You are as connected as San Francisco or New York or anyone else on the planet, and you have every ability to take advantage of that connectivity. You actually have a significant advantage. You have a very intelligent community, a very active community that wants to move forward, and you have one heck of a nice place to live in. So you're very attractive. And this again is a trend that we're seeing around the world, that more and more, particularly of the older generation, like myself, starting to get towards retirement, are saying, you know, before I actually retire, it'd be nice to work from somewhere where I could really enjoy myself and build a little career that maybe I can continue to do after I retire. I'm sure you've seen lots of people come here to live for precisely that reason. So there is no excuse. Anyone, anywhere, can take part in anything. Nothing to stop you. May have to go talk to AT&T and people like that, but nothing to stop you. That might take a few years. I love AT&T. So the way we live will be different. So I'm going to share a few other things with you. Fitbit. Anybody got a Fitbit by any chance? I bought one for my wife for Christmas. Yes, sir. Excellent. It's just an example of a device. There are several out there, and there will be many more. It tracks what you do. It's detecting your motion. It detects how high you are, GPS-wise, where you are. It can tell you, therefore, how many steps you've taken, how many flights of stairs, so to speak, what your elevation has been, how many uphill bits you've done versus downhill bits. And the simple reason, in a way, is feedback. Knowledge is power, and self-knowledge is even more powerful. If I know, I won't ask who's been on a diet. That would be embarrassing. I've certainly tried and not been particularly successful. But if you have been on a diet, you'll know that one of the most powerful things is feedback. If I can see the benefits, it encourages me to do more of it. And so feedback is critically important. This is a very simple device, and you connect to the web, and it tracks things for you, and it gives you dietary advice, and it gives you various other devices. But it's a very simple device, but very, very powerful at motivating us to do the right things. This is a bit like, think of an RFID plus. You can see here, compared to the size of a penny, it just sticks on things. But it has GPS built into it and a gas detector. It can tell you when things are going off. Now, that's kind of good for you and I, because I tend to go into the fridge and smell things, which is not very pleasant, but that's my detector of whether or not I need to throw something away. Mostly because I need my glasses to actually read what that label says. But this costs food companies, for example, hundreds and hundreds of millions a year. They stick those things on to say, yeah, throw this away. They go into their warehouse, this has all got to go. It's out of stock. Well, there's technologies that will give you a far more accurate reading. There are things that are inside their sell-by date that actually should be thrown away because they were mishandled. But they can't tell that. They can't detect that. Or they can now. So again, just another example of a piece of technology that can fundamentally change the way we run our businesses or run our homes. Now, one of the worst things about doing these presentations is it's what don't you put in. Because I've got hundreds of these kinds of examples. So I find them fun. This really actually plays to the point you were making, ma'am, around communities, self-help communities. And by self-help, it could just be fun communities from the youngsters who are actually very good at forming communities for their gaming and things like that, to self-help for the elderly, obviously for learning, for, I want to learn how to do cooking or dancing with the stars or whatever it is. But self-help communities, there are tools out there that enable us to build communities very, very quickly and effectively. They can be both local as well as global, and you can mingle the two. So there are lots and lots of ways of doing some of the things that you were talking about, which is very important. Technology can help us stay glued together. We can also do that, of course, at the personal level. There are tools, many of us have got smartphones of one form or another. There are tools out there that do everything from turn it into a remote control for our TV to guiding us on drugs that we might take or conditions that we might have. There is a danger, of course, that we become self-diagnostic hypochondriacs. But this can really help. I'll come back to that if I ever manage to get to the demo, which I may or may not because of time. This actually can be really helpful because when you go to the doctor, what's the first thing that happens? You sit in that little room waiting to be seen. They tell me it's to deal with white coat syndrome, which is many people are nervous when they go to the doctor, so they let you sit there for a while to calm down, which works for a few seconds, and then you start to get even more frustrated. But okay. But then the first thing the doctor has to do when they come in and they ask you, well, what's wrong? It's like, couldn't you have asked me that before? And we're cutting into my useful time here. And the answer is yes. Tools like this could enable me to go in and say, yeah, I've got a cough, and this takes me through cough syndromes, and it's not one of these, it's one of those. And I can go to the doctor a bit like I do at airports now, and I just put my smartphone into their what's-it reader, their QR code reader, and suddenly the doctor's got a lot of information about what I'm doing. This started a week ago, it was after I'd been playing racquetball, et cetera, as well as guiding me. Maybe I didn't need to go to the doctor. It's like, yep, that's okay, just do some exercise. A lot of tools out there at our disposal. Oh, God. Okay, good. Good is what I said. Changing the way we live. This is an IP-enabled kettle. Boils water. It can obviously communicate, in this case, to a caregiver, the daughter in this case. Now that IP kettle can tell us all sorts of very interesting things. Am I upright or am I laying on my side? Am I hot or am I cold? When was I last hot? Am I full or am I empty? So obviously, if the daughter gets a signal that says the kettle is laying on its side and it's boiling hot, there's cause for concern. But what if it's standing upright and it's cold? Well, that depends on usage patterns. What if it's 11 a.m. in the morning and Dad hasn't got out of bed and made his usual cup of tea? That's very unusual. There's a problem. So back to that point, information is knowledge, and all of these things that are now connected to the internet can tell us a lot of useful information. And there are technologies that can help us filter some of that out. I threw this in, not to promote Cisco per se, but just to give you a sense of these things can have real benefit. We saved, just from collaboration solutions, we saved in FY9, I haven't got the FY10 figures, $1.4 billion. That was the benefit that Cisco accrued because we put some of these kinds of technologies in place. If you layer on top of that all of the other internet things that we do, like e-commerce and taking orders online and all those sorts of things, the figure jumps to nearly 5 billion. That's simply saying if we did it the old way with people and paper, it would cost us 1.4 billion more than if we put in place tools and like telepresence and the things I've discussed. So there's real financial benefit for the CFOs amongst us, as well as social benefit. Here's a fascinating one. I love this one. This is from a company called Proteus. It's an IP-enabled pill. So that little black dot in the middle there is an IP chip, a small computer. Your stomach acid provides the energy source to activate the pill. It then transmits to a patch that's on your arm or your stomach, and that's got a battery in it that lasts, I think it's 6 months, and that will talk to your wireless network in your home or the hospital or wherever, and the rest is obvious. So now your doctor, your caregiver, your neighbor, back to the point you were talking about again, ma'am, you know, they can be informed. My friend next door hasn't taken her XYZ tablet. Maybe she's suffering from dementia. So if she hasn't taken it by now, she's sure as heck not going to take it for the rest of the day because she's already, you know, been compromised. So things like this, tablets that will talk to us and tell us, yes, I've been swallowed, or no, I haven't. We have ones with mini cameras in, that one I showed you earlier, that can actually, you can actually follow it as it goes through the digestive tract or through the blood vessels, and will send you images of what's going on. It gets worse. Work will be different. Here's a fact that I found useful and interesting, and you might want to take note of some of this. 84% of a company's cost structure, cost base, is due to people. One way, shape, or another, it's due to people. Obviously salaries and compensation, but also occupancy, the buildings. Those are the two really big ones. But then you've got things like telephones and computers and travel time and whatever it may be. People are our most valuable asset and our most expensive one. Our job as companies is to maximize the use of our people. It's not to get rid of them necessarily. If I could keep all of the people and turn them into folks that are actually generating more revenue, I'd be just as happy as cutting the bottom line as I am increasing the top line. But they are very, very important. And so any tool that we can use that helps us drive greater efficiency out of those folk, the better it is for us, for the company, for the country, and for the planet. If you think of green, that's another topic I could go into. Social networking is one of the ways in which that happens more and more now. Again, the younger generation brought this to our attention. The older generation like us, or like myself, resisted it for the longest while. We actually had rules inside Cisco about not using instant messaging until eventually IT threw their hands up and says, okay, we can't stop it. There's already 5,500 people using it. I guess we should admit that it exists. But we're actually, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, we're actually very good as a company of jumping on these things and say, hey, this is a new way of doing things. Social networking means we can reach more people than we could possibly have imagined using our traditional marketing approach with marketing budgets and brochures and TV ads. And we get feedback, real honest feedback from real people who are using our products or thinking about our products. These are very, very powerful mechanisms for truly seeing into the world around us, whether that's looking and talking to our employees or customers or competitors even. So these are phenomenally powerful tools. I'm not going to go through any of the numbers in the interest of time, and besides which the slide's a couple of years old. They've gone up astronomically since then. We put a lot of effort into using that technology. Communication in general, I started off by saying communication is the driver behind innovation. It's what moves the species forward. We now have the ability to communicate with anyone in any language from anywhere. We have technology in Cisco that we're developing. I can't give you a delivery date, but I'm going to say within the next 2 to 3 years, where you will be able to pick up an IP phone and talk to anybody in, let's say any one of the top 6, 10 languages around the world, French, German, English, whatever, and not have to worry about it. You will talk in English, they will hear it in Spanish, and vice versa. I actually demonstrated this. John Chambers demonstrated this 3 years ago as a prototype. It works. Any of you use voice recognition software? How many of you have got voice recognition software? How many of you have got a laptop? That's what I thought. Anybody that's got a computer has it. You just don't realize it. It's built into Microsoft Windows, has been for 5, 10 years. It's built into Mac. It's there. You can turn it on. Pretty damn good as well. Now, if you want to spend a few more shekels, you can get something like Dragon Naturally Speaking, and if you're a corporation, you can go buy Nuance and so on. It's very, very good. I literally walk around my bedroom. This is a little bit embarrassing maybe, but I will walk around my bedroom with my my laptop under my arm and dictate my white papers, because it's how I think. I'm pacing around the bedroom and I'm just talking to it, and it will capture it very faithfully. If we can capture it, we basically turn voice into text. If we can turn voice into text, we can search for it. When did Rick say this? And if we can turn it into text, we can turn it from text back to speech in any language. The only thing that's slowing us down at the moment is speed. How quickly can we convert from one to the other to the other? And the answer is it's getting pretty damn quick. Google does some amazing software online from your iPhone and things, and you can talk to it and it will translate it. And so, a world where we can talk to anyone in any language. Here's an example of health presence. Health presence allows doctors, in this case we have the doctor that's remote, an expert. The world has far too few experts. Many of them are baby boomers and retiring. Our industry is becoming specialized. There was a time when a doctor was a doctor. If you had 100 of them, you had 100 doctors. Now we have oncologists, cardiologists, radiologists, every other ologist known to man. But there aren't that many more people, and so by definition we don't have 100 doctors anymore. We've got 5 cardiologists, we've got 5 neurologists, and there aren't enough of them. Same thing in any industry, by the way. Kitchen designers, mechanics, whatever it is. How do we take those few experts and make them appear everywhere in the world that we need them? And the answer is video. This is simply an example of a doctor that is video connecting with a patient here, and we have IP-enabled pretty much everything known to man. IP blood pressure cuffs, IP ophthalmology thingies that look at the eyes. You can tell I'm a medical person. You name it, if it's a mechanic, vibration testers, sensors, temperature sensors, X-ray machines, all of them can be transmitted over the internet, bringing that expert, wherever they are in the world, to bear on the problem. 30 minutes, thank you. I'll go through this very, very quickly because it's a good business example, and I know many of you are business people. You're interested in where's the money come from. This is a very quick example of that medical world. Specialist in their office doesn't get paid when they travel across the city to the hospital. Net result, they prefer not to travel. Bit boring for them, because actually the reason they travel is often to the most interesting cases, but hey, money's money. So they stay where they are. Revenue decrease. They're missing out on some opportunities, but on balance, that's the best they could do. Hospitals now have limited resources. They would love to have this specialist available to their patients, but, you know, the other side of the city or in the next city, can't get there. So they can only offer limited services, and you know, hospitals are businesses too, so that reduces their revenue potential. Patient doesn't get the expertise that they would ideally like or actually need, and certainly not in a timely manner. Imagine you've had a heart attack. You don't have too long to fix it. If this takes an hour, even if he did say, yes, I'll come, this takes an hour to drive across the city, fingers crossed there's no car accidents, maybe too late. Patient's dead, paralyzed, whatever. So not a particularly good picture. We put video collaboration in the middle. This is a real case study from a company called Specialists on Call. The specialists can now take place with anyone. So national coverage. This specialist can now work for any hospital. Much more productive time, 40% more patients, significantly more revenue for them. 15-minute response time, not an hour driving across the city. That's the difference between life and death or paralysis in a heart attack case. Hospitals get more service, more revenue, higher quality service to the patients, broader specialists, and the list goes on. Everybody wins. The only downside to that picture is someone has to invest. Someone has to take the first step. Here's a fascinating world, 3D printing. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so let me repeat that, so just in case they didn't hear. So the question was, why don't we have more specialists? Shouldn't we be providing more education so that, in fact, we do have more specialists and you know, to serve our communities? And the answer is most definitely yes. Technology is not going to solve all the ills of the world. We should absolutely be training and educating our folks in all fields, all industries, so that we gain that specialism, etc. The problem simply is that the burdens on the world, healthcare is a prime example, the burdens on the healthcare system are exponential again, which means the demand for service constantly outpaces the availability of experts or whatever, and outpaces the budget that we have as countries, as a planet, to serve. Several years ago, the then president of the US called Cisco in, called John Chambers in, and said, well, you're our technology council, help me solve the healthcare problem. Because if we don't solve the cost of healthcare in this country, we will be bankrupt in the next 3 years. And that, I hear that all over the world. There just is not enough money. But absolutely, we should be training more specialists. Let me give another example, though, just to say it's not just healthcare. Another large company whose name shall remain anonymous had a problem where their most lucrative product is kitchens, designing kitchens. It's the most expensive room in the house, if you didn't know that, by far. So that's their most lucrative product. Unfortunately, kitchen designers are their most expensive employees. And the problem was customers would come into one store where there wasn't an expert and would walk out. They would lose the sale. And yet down the street, there's another expert sitting in that store, twiddling his thumbs because he's got nothing to do. How can we take these few experts that we have and make them appear in other locations? And it was broadly the same answer. We can do it through video technology and enable them to find the appropriate expert and bring them to bear. The third component, and it's related to what I'd said earlier, is when you look at the demographics of the working population, it is shifting alarmingly. The baby boomers are retiring, and so we have far more people dependent upon the rest of the working population to look after them. Those that are still in employment are dwindling. It's a much smaller workforce that's going to be available to us. So how do we pay for all these people that are retired? How do we make them as productive as possible? And because that workforce is dwindling, it's becoming smaller, we are actually getting fewer and fewer folks to train to be experts. And then finally, you couple that with our world. Our world simply gets more and more complex. And we specialize. The medical one, to me, is a very good example. Go back to the turn of the century in the 1900s, a doctor was a doctor. If you had a doctor in your city, great, that was your doctor. Now, do you have an oncologist? No, got to go to San Francisco to get that. What about a cardiologist? Yeah, but he's 2 cities away. You know, do you have one of these? Do you have one of those? So even though you might have 10 times more doctors, actually you have access to much far fewer experts in given realms. So it's a complex thing, but absolutely we should be educating as much as possible. 3D printing. Anybody heard of 3D printing? Oh, excellent. I shall have to find out why. There's a community that hasn't, so bear with me. We can print things in 3 dimensions. Everything here is 3-dimensional. This here is printed as one piece, and if I was able, and take that off, and I didn't bring my props, I apologize. You know, I would take that out of the printer, and it really would turn, and so on. Pills that could be printed to be precisely prescribed for me. Precisely. Not just take a couple of Tylenol, you know, but take 1.678 of ibuprofen, whatever the need is. This is just a blow-up picture of these things really work. This was printed on a 3D printer, just like that. It's color. You know, if we could move it, it would run along and the shock absorbers would bounce up and down and so on. We can print in metal as well as plastics and so on. And we can even print in human tissue. So we can print skin. We can print kidneys, blood vessels. In fact, as it says here, they've so far printed up to 22 types of tissue. Now, we're not all going to run down to the high street hardware store and pick up a new ear, but it's coming. And in fact, it came at the end of 2011, middle of 2011, June 2011. This is a 3D printed jaw, a titanium jaw that was printed so as to be an exact match to that patient. Far less reduced surgery time because it's an exact fit, you know, no sort of taking it back out again and filing a bit off, putting it back in. Reduced hospital time, just an all-round, you know, win-win-win for everybody. We really will be able to print spare parts for us as we go forward. I think, unfortunately, I'm probably going to miss that revolution, but there we are. Or what about printing food? How about if your dietitian could not only advise you as to what foods to eat or not eat, but it could actually download your meal plan to you, and your kitchen prints the food for you with all the right ingredients? Yeah, me too. Yeah, get in line. They're about 40,000 a piece at the moment. But a 3D printer, actually they were 40,000 a piece, not the food one. 3D printers have now come down. You can buy one for a little under $2,000. 12 months' time, I will guarantee you they'll be under $1,000, and 2 years' time, they'll be a couple $100. They'll probably give them away like they do printers now. If you buy so many food squidgy things, you get the printer for nothing. That's the world we're heading into. But it changes the business model. Think about this. Why would I go to Home Depot to get, you know, a new rubber washer for my faucet? I don't need to. I simply go online, find the one I want, download it, and print it at home. Exact fit, right part every time. Fundamentally changes the business model for folks like Home Depot or the food companies or anyone else. So think about that for your company. What does that do to you? Because it's either going to do it to you or for you, your choice. The way we learn will be different. Augmented reality. I love augmented reality. I've built a few of these in our labs back in Cisco. What this is showing, many of us have been to airports where you've got that defibrillator. Is that right? Thank you. Don't make me say it again. Machine on the wall. You know, someone's having a heart attack and it gives you simple instructions. Put the paddles on, kapow. What this is doing is saying, yeah, and we'll also prior video. So this is a mock-up, but what this is intending to show is this is the real patient. This is what your cell phone, your smartphone is seeing, this patient and that person. And it's overlaying onto that video so that maybe your friend who's helping you can say, no, move your hands down a bit, you know, over. So real-time, on-the-fly teaching, in this case of a topic that I probably knew nothing about to start with. Here's some other examples of augmented reality. Many of you will have augmented reality apps on your smartphones already. Any of you guys got augmented reality apps? Yeah, one or two. They're out there. They're free, by the way. You can get a lot of them for free. I have a great little one. You hold it up and it says, yep, there's a Starbucks 1.2 miles over there. All free. The one at the top there you can't see, but it's a smartphone again, and it's pointing at a skin lesion, and what it said is, yes, virus detected. This one here is obviously overlaying an X-ray onto someone's arm. So now, this could be education for me, the patient. I hold my arm up, and it says, yes, let me show you why your arm hurts, Rick. So when the doctor comes in, you know where to point. Or it could obviously be helping back to that surgeon who's leaning over my exposed body, and there's the MRI laying out on top of my body. And the doctor knows precisely what to do and when to do it. Here's a few other examples. Biographical feedback through glasses. These were due out last year. In fact, they are in prototype right now, where information is actually projected onto the glasses. These ones are a bit more sophisticated with augmented reality, and there's a forecast of where we're going with contact lenses that will project information onto our eyes automatically. Those are real, by the way. This is not science fiction. The military are paying a fortune for these things to be developed. Talk about head-up display. It will be like heads up like nothing you've ever seen. I'm going to skip through some of these real quick. How many? 15. Damn, I'm not going to get there. Ways to think out of the brain. So brain-machine interfaces. We actually have ways now of connecting the human brain to machines. Obviously for things like prosthetics to help folks. But the military, again, have been working on stuff. This is the mind control project. This is several years old. These are brain probes. They are becoming much, much smaller. Think back to that chip I showed where they can actually inject a camera in you. So we are really getting to a point where we will have little mini robots running around inside our body, repairing the body, doing whatever. I'm gradually, as you see, getting to more and more exotic because some of this becomes less and less obvious to you right now. But think back. What does these kinds of things mean to your industry? TV, this is much more here and now. TV video will watch you every bit as much as you watch it. We can tell what you're watching. We can tell where your eyes are looking on that screen. We can therefore do targeted advertising. There's all sorts of things we're doing. And believe me, it's happening right now. It really is. I mean, we may not like some of this, but it is happening. And some of it will be useful, and some of it won't be. The way we play will be different. Robots, I'm going to skip over some of this in the interest of time. There is a point, and this comes back to the singularity argument, there will come a point where the machines have more intelligence than the human brain, at least in terms of processing power, access to information. Does that mean they are then intelligent and in control, and we have no means to stop them? I don't personally believe that to be the case. But they are certainly becoming more and more intelligent. Any of you see Watson win Jeopardy? Phenomenal, isn't it? Watson's IBM's latest computer. IBM has this competition, and every few years they'll always have a chess tournament. Well, they gave up with chess. That was too easy. So they now play Jeopardy, and this just creamed the human beings. I mean, this thing just, it was great. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. These are more robots that I'm not going to go into, but these things are just phenomenal. That they call it Big Dog. It actually looks like a donkey. Can carry a payload twice, if not 3 times, what a normal donkey can, and it doesn't fall over. They've actually got a video of it standing on a pond of ice, and they kick it, and it just skitters across the ice and rights itself, and off it goes again. So robots are becoming amazing. Virtual worlds. We will live in virtual worlds. Any of you played in Second Life? Okay, a few of you. Go play. It's free. Go play. It's fun. George. Oh, you mean down here? 2035? Oh, completely replaces humans in the workforce. Yes. These are some of the projections that some folks have. Ray Kurzweil is one of them, as you well know. I do not personally believe that will happen. I just don't. Could they? They can certainly replace us in many things that we do. They could certainly replace us in many dangerous occupations that put stress on the human species, like lifting heavy loads or whatever. I don't actually see them replacing the human workforce in its entirety, but they will fundamentally shift the human workforce. They already have. Name me a car manufacturer that doesn't use robots. I mean, they don't walk around, but they're robotic. No one sits there and welds things anymore, at least not very much. So these things are already here. It's how we harness them that's important. Virtual worlds are fascinating, and the graphics are getting better and better. This is actually Cisco's annual sales event. We used to fly 16,000 people into San Francisco. Little bit expensive. Now we fly far fewer. We have them go to their local main offices, but we all meet up in this virtual world, and the response is that this is even better because they can join at their time frame. They can maybe do it from home with their fluffy slippers on. They can download content instead of carrying bags around. They can instant message and blog with each other saying, hey, have you seen this over here? What do you think of it? So virtual worlds are very interesting, and as the graphics get better, they are going to be something else. 3D will give way to holography. The Japanese are already pledging that by the 2022 World Cup, they will have some form of holographic thing. They can't be too specific at the moment. They're showing this picture of apparently an intelligent handheld device that will be holographic and it will jump out at you. But holography is real, and it's coming, and it has huge potential. Those are actually real pictures of holographic colored images. For those who've seen holograms before, there used to be these green things that you had to view in a certain light. Well, not anymore. Every one of these images is not real, to give you a sense of graphics and where graphics has come from. They are all computer generated. This one in particular, if only I'd had time, is a video. And this young lady, when she talks, exhibits all of the body language, the emotion, the facial expression, reaction to questions that you could possibly imagine. You would be hard pressed to know that it wasn't a real human being. That's the quality of graphics that we have now. And you can find her on YouTube. Emily is her name. I forget the full name. And then I finally want to introduce you to Hallie. I hope to do a very quick. I've got 10 minutes. Oh, okay, good. So I might have time to do a very quick demo. The demo I want to give, I'm going to give a short component of it today, is to put some of these things together and say, how can we start to provide intelligent automation? So we have things like digital signage in the world, we have kiosks, we have voice recognition, but historically, if you look around you, none of these things are connected. So I can walk into a store and there's a wonderful digital display, but it can't talk to my cell phone, it doesn't talk to the kiosk where I want to order something. They're all disjointed bits. What I'm about to show you is a prototype software from a company called Wetware, and Cisco's working with Wetware, that can take any input, deliver to any output, and apply intelligence in the middle. So yes, it can take voice, it could take text, it could take an infrared signal. If I just crossed an infrared beam, it could be a pressure sensor, temperature sensor, a kettle that tells you if it's fallen over or standing up. Any input to any output. It could speak to you, it could type a message, it could turn a motor or turn a light switch on and off, which is actually what I'm going to demonstrate. And we can program it to do anything, very, very simply. You could program it. We don't have to have degrees in computer science to be able to do this. We could program it through very simple scripts that say, I want you to do this for me. And it can connect to the real world. Here's a couple of examples that we've been working on in my group. The top one is real. It's actually in Mountain View, in a bank branch in Mountain View. And those panels are touch sensitive. She's also voice activated. And I can walk up and I might touch the desk to say I'm interested in insurance, or I might talk to her. And especially if she's got a camera there, she might recognize me. I'm a customer there. And she said, good morning, Rick. How can I help you today? How did that mortgage work out for you that I talked to you about last week? So, well, today I'm interested in insurance. And we start to have a dialogue. What kind of insurance? Car insurance. When do you need it for? How much? Tell me the registration of your car. all of this information that she is gathering, and we're just having a dialogue. And then when she's ready, she says, okay, I've got enough. Let me connect you now to a real human being who can close the sale. And that's what she does. Maybe I come up on the other screen. It's a telepresence type screen, and now I can talk to a real human being. Making it far more efficient. Fantastic customer experience for me. Same thing in the medical world, which was the bottom one. The nurse here is asking me questions, maybe while I'm sitting in that little room getting frustrated. And she's saying, you know, where does it hurt? You know, and I'll tell her about my cough. Well, have you been to any of the following countries? No. Why are you asking? So she says, let me tell you why I'm asking. I'll play you a video. You know, coughs that hurt here are generally because the lungs are doing so-and-so. Coughs that hurt there are probably because you pulled the muscle. So she can both gather information from me, she can educate me, and then when the doctor walks in, of course, we can have a much more fruitful dialogue. So there's just a couple of examples of how this technology works. Now, I will finish the slides here, and then hopefully the demo will work and hasn't actually conked out because we've switched backwards and forwards between Windows and so on and so forth. But I wanted to leave you with this thought, and I'll try and mention it again. Everything that I've talked about today is real. It's real right now. You may not be able to walk down to Best Buys and buy some of it, but it's real. And it's going to be very real in not too many years. The opportunities that we have are limited only by your imagination. You are connected to the world. There is nothing to stop you taking part and doing whatever you want. And as I said to the youngsters in particular amongst us, dream big. If you think you've got a big dream now, double it, multiply it by 10, multiply it by 1,000. The opportunities are absolutely vast. So as I switch over here, are there any questions on the presentation that I've given?
Presentation, you didn't mention anything. I'm looking for tablets. They seem to be invading our lives, and they seem to be a universal kind of output. Where do you see tablets going in? We've got the Kindle in the marketplace. We've got the iPad, but
right.
that was only the entry. Where's the exit?
The tablet, and yes, I've got 3 or 4 of them. The tablet it ultimately will go the way of every other technology. It's a natural law of progression, in that, in a sense, they will disappear. They will disappear because they will become ubiquitous in our world, and therefore almost invisible in our world. The telephone has almost got there. You know, a telephone used to be somewhere on, you went to the telephone. You didn't have one on your desk. You went to the telephone. Then we started getting them on our desks. Now they're, on our bodies, so to speak, and, they turn up in earpieces and everything. And now, actually, the telephone is almost disappearing. Where's it going to? It's going into the tablet, because now I want a tablet that actually does everything. It's a computer and a telephone. Okay. One could argue whether the telephone got bigger or the tablet consumed it or whatever. But what will continue on is the smaller, thinner, lighter trend. Why do I need a telephone? I need a telephone to talk to you. Okay. I'm not using my telephone right now, and I'm talking to you quite happily. Well, that's obviously because I've got a microphone and, you can hear me. But what if this room had microphones embedded all the way around it? Back to those really small computers I talked about. What if this room, probably didn't need thousands of them, but what if it had 10, a dozen, 100 microphones embedded in the wallpaper? I don't need a phone anymore. My car doesn't need a phone. I've got one of those voice thingies, now in the not too, I see a few grimaces at that. They're not too good at the moment at detecting voice, which, by the way, surprises me as a technologist because I know what it takes and it should be a lot better than it is. But the fact is, in the not too distant future, my car, I won't actually have a phone or a thing that I clip on my visor. It'll be built into the car. It'll be built into my house. It'll be built into my office. It'll be built into the shops. I don't need a telephone per se. What I might still have, certainly for the foreseeable future, is it will become wristbound. There are already watches that I can buy today that are a phone. Cost about $250. Not outlandish by watch standards, but you can get a watch that's a phone. So that's what I think will happen in the way of tablets. So tablets are nothing more than a computer. They just got awfully slim and therefore carryable. But if this room could be a computer, if it could react to me, then why do I need a physical device? My car will be a computer, my room will be a computer, and yes, sir. Hope that helped. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks for coming here. And just real quick feedback, I've been telecommuting for years. Thanks for your VPN technology.
Good man.
Yeah. And your MDS switches are awesome. Storage guy.
I can get out my depth now.
Also former Air Force electronic warfare tech. One of the things that I see everywhere is I'm wondering how Cisco does research or documents the effects of non-ionizing radiation from all the RF technology surrounding us, number one. And then the next one would be, of course, encryption and security around those type of devices.
First of all, your question is beyond my ability to answer in depth, just so that I'm honest with you. Radiation of all forms, which is a form of pollution, if you will, it's a wireless pollution, or light pollution if you're an astronomer like me, etc., are things that we all struggle to reduce. Firstly, because it's not good for the environment, and secondly, because radiation, by definition, takes energy, and energy costs money. So if we can reduce the amount of radiation that a device emits, at least radiation that we didn't intend or want it to emit, then we can actually make things less power hungry, produce less heat, and once we can do that, we can make them smaller and smaller and so on. So I think a big part of the answer to that question is some of the things we've talked about in terms of we are building things that are smaller, that are more efficient, and therefore should produce less RF signals and radiation of all kinds. That's probably as far as I could go on that question, to be perfectly honest. You'd have to talk to our deep engineers about some of that. Security encryption is another whole topic that's really complex, and there are various ways of doing it, not just at the electronic level of Cisco, let's say, with IP packets, which we absolutely can encrypt and so on, but also using other biometric techniques, so that it's not just about can the information move from place to place, but can we do authentication and non-repudiation and all sorts of other things. And that will bring in many other techniques as well. But we'd really need to talk to our engineers to go any further than that. Yes, sir.
Hi. All your talk about unlimited futures made me think of a book On Intelligence by Jeff Hawkins, the creator of the Palm, who argued that artificial intelligence won't ever really live up to its expectations. Are you familiar with the argument, and do you have a thought about that? You said he could talk about anything.
I can. I can make up anything. Artificial intelligence is one of those things, like many others, where we set a standard, and then when we meet it, we move the goalposts because we didn't like the answer. But there's a big part of me that would agree with the argument. So there's a very famous mathematician called Alan Turing, for those who are in the technical world. And Turing established what's called the Turing test for artificial intelligence. It's very simple. It said if you put a real human being in one room that's connected to a potential human being in another, maybe through a keyboard, or maybe nowadays it might be through a microphone, doesn't matter. But if you can connect a real human being to a potential human being, and the real human being can't tell the difference, then you have displayed artificial intelligence. Well, we surpassed that a long time ago. So then we changed the guidelines. Well, that wasn't really intelligence. That was just its ability to type. But could it detect context as opposed to simply a textual thing? Can it detect context? Well, we struggled for a few years, and then the answer is yes, we managed to get it to do that. Well, then let's change the goalposts again, because that's not really intelligence. Can it detect emotion? Because human beings detect emotion. So we test, and again, we manage to succeed, and then they say, no, well, let's change it again. The real thing that differentiates humans is art, the ability to be creative. Well, we now have machines that can do that too. So it's partly, to me at least, a never-ending argument that will never be answered, because we'll always, as a human species, argue that it's not really intelligence. I personally don't worry about it. To me, the question is the technology useful to me? And if it is, I don't care whether you call it intelligent, dumb, you know, hot, cold, or anything else. Is it useful? Then I'll use it. If it's not, then I won't. So I personally tend to avoid that argument of who's right or wrong about artificial intelligence, but that's just me. Yes, sir.
You know, you're just not someone here, one of those that are here trying to make us complacent.
How do you know I'm not a robot from the future?
We're at 2 o'clock.
Are we? Okay, we've got to go. I mean, it's a very real question. How will we know? And I can tell you that I don't know whether it'll be 20 years' time, 50 years' time, or 100 years' time. I don't know. The point will come where the answer to your question is you won't. You won't be able to tell whether I'm real or not real. The accent. This is my deep Southern accent. George, did you have a comment to make? And then, okay. Okay. To it. We'll term that the Ray-Ban test. Schwarzenegger comes back. It's a very real question. I actually don't necessarily disagree with the singularity argument. There will come a time, back to your point, when computers will be, at least perceived to be, as intelligent as we are. Superior in strength. They're already superior in strength. They can weld cars and pick them up. I can't. The question is how we use them as society. Can we control them? Sure. We don't have to manufacture them. We can turn their programming off. There's things we can do. I do not subscribe to a world where they take over and kill all the humans, etc., and so on. At least not for a while. So, Mitch, you had a question.
All right. I think time's running out, but I've got a question sort of to put at the end maybe here of tying this all together, the future of tech, and you've discussed some issues with tech taking over our place as humans here. And I don't worry about that all that much. But there is one area in which I wonder how the future, how tech will influence education, basically. And I think education may be one of the places that becomes obsolete in the future. I personally decided I want to be a web developer. And instead of going to college and getting a degree in IT, I got a project. Somebody agreed to pay me a few $1,000s. And when I don't know how to do something, I Google it, and I find the answer. I don't need a teacher anymore. Now I have a profession. I didn't have to go to college to get a certificate. So how do you think tech is going to affect, basically, education in the future?
I respectfully disagree with you at a gross level. At an individual level, and this has always been true through history, at an individual level, you can certainly go and learn skills, and you can become very competent, and you can make a heck of a lot of money. Just look at some of the young kids that create games. And there's nothing wrong with following that path whatsoever. But I don't subscribe to the argument that computers will make education or teaching obsolete. Because we need human beings to help us interpret what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and to guide us where to go and look. And I've been talking to a number of universities. Duke is one of them, for example. So very reputable universities that are looking to turn the educational model on its head. So instead of having the almighty professor up the front pontificating and educating these wonderful young minds, they still do that. But in a sense, they step to one side. They provide some base information, and they allow the students to run the classroom, because they have access to all this information. The professor then becomes an advisor to the student body, not some, God that stands at the front with the all-knowing knowledge. And that fundamentally changes the nature of education, but it does not remove the need for it. It simply changes the way we deliver it. And I think it will be wonderful when we can have students that are thinking for themselves. If for those who might be in the education space or the physics space, I know there are young folks at the back there. One of my heroes is Richard Feynman, Dick Feynman, one of the finest physicists of the past decade or more. And he was quite scathing of the educational system, saying, we have to teach people to think, not simply remember. And that's what this new breed of teaching, I think, will bring us through technology. The information's in there. It's out on the internet. It's available in a whole array of sources. What we as educators need to do, he says, I'm not an educator, but I told you I'd talk about anything. What I would do if I was an educator is my job is to infuse and excite and point people in the right direction, young people in the right direction, and say, go play with this, and then come back and talk to me. And that, I think, is the new breed of education. Okay, I'm going to do a very quick demo of this. I've way overstayed my time. Forget this big box. It's only as big as that because I've got a power socket on the side here, and I'm not going to be able to demonstrate as much as I'd hoped, if anything at all. No, it's working. So hopefully this will still work as long as the voice system is working. Productivity. Windows voice system has closed down on me. It does that if you leave it too long. So I apologize, it will take too long to fire it back up. All I have here is a radio mic. I can talk to her. All we're using is the standard Microsoft voice recognition system. Nothing fancy, didn't buy anything, it's just there. And I could normally talk to it if it hadn't closed down while I was presenting. I can mimic that, I'll just use my mouse. But it would have gone through and said, okay, Rick, in fact, the sound system's not working either. You can see she's talking, you're going to have to take my word for it. If anybody wants to stop by afterwards, I'll show you on the laptop, it really does work. But she basically just said to me, what do you want to do? Driver's license, whatever. Think of productivity in your company. I've walked in and instead of taking up a human being's time, I walk up to this kiosk, there she is, and I say, yeah, driver's license, I need to renew my driver's license, please. And she brings up the form. And she's going to guide me through filling out that form. And the first thing she asks me, she says, is this an existing driver's license? Do you just want to renew it? And I say, yes, please. And I put that on the desk, and there it goes. It's pulled off all of my salient information, filled in the form for me, and is now going to remind me that before you move on, there's some questions you need to think about. Now, it really is as simple as that. You could apply this in any industry and say, could I automate some of our processes and have this avatar? This happens to be a female, it could be male, it could be a fluffy dog for all I care. Or she could not exist at all. We have built this technology into a car of the future. And I can talk to the car and say, where is the nearest, cheapest gas station? And it goes out to the internet, actually to Google, good old Google, looks up the information and brings it back and then talks me through how to get to that restaurant or that gas station or whatever it may be. All I have here, and the reason I'm touching this wooden box, is I've got an RFID reader in here. I have a whole range of other things. Education, I'll quickly show. And where's Laura? Tell me if you need to throw me out of here. Okay, she's not around. Oh, she hasn't thrown me out yet. Okay, good. I do wish I'm sorry you can't hear her or whatever. But anyway, I might say, well, I want fitness training. And I click on fitness training. She asks me for some information. And what she's actually asking me for is my weight. So I'm going to say I'm 300 pounds. And what she's telling me is she's gone away to get my records. And she's telling me I'm a little bit overweight since last time. And I've got this great little video, Rick, that you might find useful. So let me bring this home to the slides I was showing. Any input, if only it worked, voice, so voice recognition. She's speaking back to me. I can obviously use a mouse. I've just used a keyboard. She's playing video to me. Any of these, any input to any output from anywhere. Let me just short circuit that and take us back, and I'll show you the last one, which is the aging demo. So here's one, again, I built this specifically for the European Commission. Again, I told you I'm working with them on the aging problem. And it's a pity you can't hear. Because what she says to me is, Rick, it's time to take your metformin tablets. And normally I would hold up a tablet box. Unfortunately, she talks, I won't see anything, but I'd hold my tablets up, and she would say, no, that's the wrong tablet. You're not supposed to take that one now. And then I hold up the right one, and I click it on there, and she said, yep, that's the one to take. Now think of how that affects, say, a dementia patient. I've got a help button. I could say help. I could click buttons. I might be wearing a help wristband and, and touch it on there. And so, she calls for help. She could be talking to that teapot to work out, has it fallen over? Is it hot? A pressure sensor. Has Rick got out of his chair within the last 2 hours? No, then he needs to, because, he's got blood clots and things like that. He's got to get up and move about. So she's my Jiminy Cricket, saying, come on, out of that chair. We can control the television. So that aging parent could say, I want to watch the news. She knows that news means channel 7, not channel 2. Rick likes channel 7. Light sensors. The one thing I can't show you because I didn't have it set up. This software, this avatar, it's more than an avatar, could be run on any computer anywhere in the world. And those computers can talk to each other. So the fact that I just touched the wrong tablet to here, first of all, she tells me that's the wrong tablet, but she also sends a message to my daughter that's 50 miles away, working in a different office, to say, your dad's trying to take the wrong tablet again. Or I press that emergency button, and up on her screen pops a help button that says, Dad's called for help. And I've detected that the teapot is laying on its side and it's hot. So I've notified the neighbor and the doctor, and I'm talking to her. That's actually what she does. She says, I'm going to ask you to talk to me every so often. She puts some nice soothing music on. And then, but every now and again she says, are you okay, Rick? And if I stop responding, she calls the ambulance. So back to the very good question you asked way early on. We can use technology to help connect, in this case, aging people, disabled people, healthy people, heck, to their communities, to their loved ones. And what it means is that caring daughter or son doesn't have to leave work at the age of 50 to go look after aging parents. They can still remain involved. The elderly remain as self-sufficient as one can be. The doctors aren't inundated with mountains of information, because she only sends the information if the following 3 things occur together within a certain time period, then tell the doctor, but not before. So back to your point, George, about the difference between data and information. She filters the data and provides the doctor or the caregiver with information, with knowledge that they can act upon. So that's where I was going to finish. If you want to come and look at this and play with it, you'd be most welcome. But thank you so much for inviting me here. It's really a pleasure. Oh. I didn't. I forgot to show you controlling the real world. So, I can turn lights on and off as well. And one of the demonstrations I often do is that the caregiver, the son or daughter 50 miles away, or the other side of the world for that matter, knows that my light's on and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So they can press a button on their computer and turn my lights off for me. So, just all sorts of things we can do. I love playing with toys.
Well, thank you all for coming today. Rick, we really appreciated your presentation. Please take this as a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And please tell your friends and colleagues to tune in to Nevada County TV's website to see when this is going to be displayed again, when they're going to air this presentation. Thank you all for your time and for coming. We sure appreciate it.